Welcome to the last edition of 2017 of Uncle Bobby's Country Corner, where real men don't play. And today's show is dedicated to the memory and legacy of Leon Theodore Garr, also known as the godfather of black business in Los Angeles. To my immediate left, I have the honor of having in studio the heir apparent to Garr Enterprises, Israel Garr. Welcome, Israel.
Hello, Bobby. How you doing?
Man, it's with mixed emotions that I do this show today because as we began to try to enter the property right here on 43rd and Crenshaw, there'd been an incident where somebody has lost their lives, and it's a sobering reminder of the times that we're living in. And at the same time, I'm heartened by the fact that you're here and that I'm here, and not 10 minutes away from here, Mr. Garr cast his bucket down and built some amazing homes up in Baldwin Hills. So it's a mixed bag from which we pull tonight to do this show. And I'd like to take a couple of moments to share with the listening audience a presentation that I made Friday at Mr. Garr's memorial service. And as we get that clip ready, and you sit here with me, what is it that you are most inspired about, and as it relates to the memories that you have about your incredible grandfather?
His business techniques, the way he helped individuals, the way he helped people, the way he loved to watch other people smile because they accomplished their goals. My grandfather was a real man. He loved helping people, and I love to sit back and watch and learn on how he did it.
You know, the man lived 103 3/4 years, and up until the very end, the thing that I'm most amazed by is the fact that he never made excuses. So what do you draw most from having spent the many years that you have at the feet of one of the great men that has ever lived in this country?
Man, how to take the lead and keep going, how to help people, how to make sure that you're happy, how to make sure your family's taken care of, how to make sure you treat people like people, how to give respect and show respect.
And you have 3 boys yourself, right?
Correct.
Do they begin to grasp the magnitude of being a Garr at this stage of their lives? I know
the oldest one does, but the other 2 is a little young.
Yeah,
so not right.
Yeah. And what do you hope to instill in them as it relates to the lessons that you've learned from Mr. Garr?
Respect. Once again, always go back to respect. Treat individuals like you want to be treated. Make friends and make money. So
we're going to share a clip from my remarks at Mr. Garr's funeral.
More degrees than a thermometer, and not be able to find your way out of a one-room apartment with an exit sign over the door. Mr. Garr didn't have much formal education, but what he did have was an innate brilliance and a vision that encompassed the lives of people from one side of this country to the other. I'm one of the beneficiaries of his generosity. 7 years ago, he asked me to help him write his autobiography, The Millionaire Chronicles, Let's Go to Work, Leon T. Garr. And the thing that I learned so much from Mr. Garr was that you can never underestimate the will of a human being. The man suffered from typhoid fever at the age of 3 years old. He wasn't supposed to comb gray hair. He never allowed anything to rob him from his destiny. He spent the next 100 years giving and teaching and breeding in his family self-determination. And when we finished Let's Go to Work, that's when the work really started, because it became important to share that book with as many people as we possibly could. And because of the commitment of his grandson, Israel Garr, we were able to collaborate with another visionary and brilliant person by the name of Antoine Fisher, who produced a documentary film called This Life of Mine. And I bear witness to you today that the work that Mr. Garr did and embedded in others to do will live beyond the grave. And I salute him. I love him for being an amazing inspiration and an example of human possibility. May he rest in peace, and thank you for a moment of time.
I listen to that and I think about how on many occasions we would sit around and just soak in the many lessons that he was willing to teach anybody that was willing to listen. As you listen to those remarks, what are some of your thoughts and reflections?
My grandfather was a visionary. If he seen it, he could do it, and he really believed that nobody or no one could tell you that you couldn't do it. It's like he was a motivator. And the way he motivate was to show you that it could be done because he'd do it first. You know,
there's so many stories that we are not able, within the confines of the time we have tonight, to talk about, because we want to spend the second half of the show going forward. We want to spend the first half looking back. I can recall when he talked about building the home that he passed away in, and the fact that they told him that he couldn't build the structure that he ultimately built. Could you kind of illuminate what that process was like as you now sit back sometimes on occasion and look out at that remarkable view up in Baldwin Hills that they said couldn't be done?
Well, it was a hill, and they said the house couldn't be done. Granddaddy was like, no, I can build a house here, and I'm go build a house here. That's exactly what he done. Not only he shocked the architects, the city, everybody else that had something to do with it, as far as building permit, as far as the inspectors coming out saying it couldn't be done, and him showing them that he could. It was amazing.
You know, and this happened after some historic fires here in the greater Los Angeles area that's known as the Baldwin Hills fires. And he bought several parcels of land in Baldwin Hills during that time period that he did the same thing. He acquired the property, built the property, and then became the bank, which is a reflection of his genius in many ways, man. So how does that make you feel to know that someone that you share DNA with had the capacity to do so much with very little formal education?
Makes me feel a lot, man. And right now in today's society, we have a lot more tools than he had. But he had what you call common sense. He might not have a lot of smarts through schooling, but he had common sense, and he had the will to make the money and the will to do the work.
You know, speaking of the work, we're looking at various photos at different stages of Mr. Garr's life. Mr. Garr was an immaculate dresser, and he had extraordinary taste when it came to the finer things in life. And he took great pride not only in his appearance, but his demeanor, and how, without becoming too, quote unquote, uppity, the man would wear his clothes with a style that was truly unique, man. What are your recollections of that? Huh?
He was sharp. He stayed sharp. You know what I'm saying? Granddaddy said, "You are who you look like, baby." You was sharp. He kept a crease in his pants, his socks pulled up, and his shoes shine.
You know, one of the things that I really take great pride in terms of being around Mr. Garr, it was his example. Someone, I think it was your sister Marguerite, told a story at the funeral of how he would drive a considerable distance from his home in Baldwin Hills to South L.A., almost East L.A., over on Central Avenue to Bowers & Sons Cleaners to carry his clothes. How many times can you recall instances where he would go out of his way to recycle black dollars?
That's the way he was, man. He was like, everybody else is against us. If we come together and brought our money together, we could help each other. And if he thought or knew that you had a black business, he spent his money black, man. That's one thing I can't say about my grandfather. He always instilled in me to spend your money black to help your people first. And that's not being prejudiced. That's not being, it's just like we helping each other before we help everybody else.
Now, you were fairly young in the 80s when there was a failing savings and loans in this community called Founders Savings and Loan. And what are your recollections of the process of Mr. Garr acquiring a failed savings and loan and converting it into the only commercial bank owned by an African American west of the Mississippi?
Well, first, when he went to talking about, they didn't think a black man could come up with the money that he said he could come up with. And then a couple of other investors that was going to invest with him, I guess they seen their turnaround was going to take longer than they expected because he wanted cash to go in and buy the bank. And one of the investors was like, most of them started pulling it out. So one was like, well, we're not going to make no money until this date. And Granddaddy was like, well, you knew that when you signed the documentation. So he was like, I can't afford to have my money tied up. So Granddaddy had his accountant write him a check to buy him out. That's how he become 100% owner with no investors. And then when he went to the individuals to get the bank, I wasn't there, but he was listening to him talk. He was in the room and wasn't that many black people in there. There was more white people in the room. And they was like, well, sir, how do you intend to pay for this bank? My grandfather said he looked him straight in his face and said, with a twist of a pen.
And that is the lore of who he was in that kind of a way. Growing up in Louisiana at the turn of the century, Mr. Garr was confronted with a number of different challenges. And one of the first that he shared with me that we talked about in his autobiography, Let's Go to Work, The Millionaire Chronicles of Leon T. Garr. He talked about working on a construction site that involved building a highway. And it wasn't a lot of mechanism back then, so everything was manual, and he was steering this mule. And he put the whip to the mule, and there was a response from one of the overseers that you better not whip that mule. I'm going to let you take that story from there.
I can recall to some extent. I think that it was kill a mule, get another one, something like that, to a certain extent, that the mule was more important to the white people than the black people was. To the white man than the black man was. So, we was he's saying that black people was below mules. And his response was very interesting, particularly for the early 1900s. We're talking the 1920s, the early 1920s, because he told me he wasn't no more than about 14 or 15 years old at the time. And he said that when the guy told him if he ever hit that mule again, he would kill him, and he threatened Mr. Garr. Mr. Garr said he went to his car and got his pistol and said, man, if you try to whoop me like I whooped that mule, we're going to have some problems, right? And the rest of the story was that he went home, and by the time he got home, the sheriff had been alerted. Yeah, Thigpen, Sheriff Thigpen. And he had came by the Garr property because the Garrs owned 400 acres of land free and clear in St. Bernard Parish, which encompasses the city of Ruston, Louisiana, that also encompasses Grambling University. And he talked about the fact that the sheriff said, look, these people might want to have some issues with y'all about Mr. Garr threatening to kill that white man. And he said, but I did tell him. Now, you're going to have to deal with them outside their property line, because if you cross that property line, that ain't the only gun the Garrs had. And when you hear stories like that, being a descendant of the Garr family, what does that speak to in terms of self-determination and a sense of ownership? Well, it speaks into they had a lot of hard things to go through, especially back then. He was telling me, if you see a white person, you had to get off the side of the road, you had to bow your head, you couldn't look at him. And the things that he came through in order to be the person that he was before he passed was amazing. And I just look at our race now, as far as my people, and we take advantage of a lot of things that's going on, that some of the things that he had to work through. I don't think we can make it now. If we had to go back to where we was, and that's the way we're going, because we are going backwards. And if we're not careful, man, we in trouble. And my grandfather's vision was to try to reach out to help the individuals, to try to help yourself.
He also talked about during those formative years, as he became a skilled craftsman, because he had extraordinary coordination between his mind and his hands. And he started building things as early as 7 years old. And
he built a piggy bank to store his money.
And, he would tell me about building the first brick building on the campus of Grambling University.
Correct.
And that has inspired you to maintain that long-standing relationship with Grambling University. Can you speak to how you feel about still being attached to a school that he helped build physically?
I mean, it feels good. Like I said, to build one of the first block buildings on the campus, man. Grambling has done came up, and it's well known in the Afro American community. I would love to see my kids go to Grambling.
It's interesting because you were one of the sponsors of the Grambling podcast before the game Saturday between Grambling and North Carolina A&T. And being a young man who spent a number of your formative years in North Carolina, I'm sure you had some mixed emotions about that. But at the end of the day, it was a great football game. And to know that you in some way contributed to that event leaves you feeling how?
Leaves me feeling good, man, because both of them are black colleges. And they said we couldn't have a black president. We did. I'm looking for another one. And I'm looking for one to come out of A&T. Or Grambling, or Southern, or the rest of the black schools,
Mm-hmm. One of the things that I look back at now that we're sitting here today and talking about the legacy and the impact of a single individual. Once that bank deal went through and the conversion was made, first of all, I want to allow people to understand the significance and the difference between a savings and loan and a commercial bank. A savings and loan is limited severely in terms of what it can and cannot do with the money that it takes in the form of deposits. A commercial bank has a tremendous amount of flexibility, and that's truly the engine of the American economy, is the commercial banks. And when Mr. Garr acquired that bank, it had a tremendous impact on the black community in Los Angeles, as well as creating a blueprint that should have been replicated across the country. So as you look back at walking into that institution and seeing the people coming and going, knowing that they were making the kinds of transactions that allowed the community to in some ways expand, what are your impressions and thoughts about that?
Man, that's deep, Bobby. I mean, to see a black person own something that only white people have was amazing, and know that my family owned it. To see, like you just said, transactions over here off Crenshaw and Stalker, the same way going off in Beverly Hills and Highland.
I was told recently that one of the deals that got done was the launching of what has now become a formidable entrepreneur by the name of P. Diddy.
Well, I'm not. I mean, I know he worked with my cousin. My cousin was the president of the bank, so I know they had business interactions, but I don't know exactly to the extent. So
yeah, he borrowed money to launch Sean John.
Okay, then
from that bank.
Well, see, you telling me something I didn't really know, so I'm going to call Puff up and tell him I need some clothes, man. If we help start that, you better go on and help, bless back so I can bless the neighborhood and the kids in the neighborhood.
Well, that's why it's so important for stories to be fleshed out and told so that, subsequent generations can understand that this is not about somebody that's so far removed from your human experience that it didn't make any difference. But having a commercial lending institution in a black community is essential for growth. And for Mr. Garr to understand that in ways that you wouldn't expect him to based on his limited education says two things. Sometimes we make too much about formal education. The other is visionaries are the cornerstones of a thriving and prospering community. And I say that with the sense that as you assume new responsibilities, it's important that people understand that we can't just sit back and be spectators. Mm-hmm. We have to encourage and inspire and support people who are adding opportunities to a mix of things that make a community stable and a place worth living in. Because as we sit here right now, this community is transforming rapidly.
And it's coming in, there's money coming in from all over, and everybody is getting it except the people that's living in the community. And that's got to stop.
So what are some of the things that you envision doing over the next couple of years to be a part of the solution as opposed to part of the problem?
One, I'm going to get with the neighborhood and continue what my grandfather started, a vision of building and getting paid and bringing money back to the neighborhood, because he never moved out of the neighborhood, and he also believed in keeping the money in the neighborhood to beautify and better the people around here in the neighborhood. My feet is hurting. I love Martin Luther King, but I'm tired of marching, and marching ain't going to do nothing but just allow them to let you walk to a certain extent, and then when they get tired, they go do everything they can to unpersuade you to stop. You know, we got to start making decisions. We got to start uniting, coming together, and make the right decisions and move forward.
What were some of the enterprises that you participated in once you were old enough to work in the family businesses that I think it would be interesting that my listening audience knew about?
I participated in, he have a school in Orange Coast College. It's a child care facility. It was like a $3 million building when we started, but it ended up being more. I participated right on 51st and Western in the city of Los Angeles. We have it was Garr Child Care once before, but now KIP is renting the building, but I helped build the building from the ground up. We have a banquet hall on 55th and Western.
That's the Garr, Leon and Maddie Garr
banquet hall, correct.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
I helped clean that out because it was a body shop. My grandfather always believed in, he seen the property, he can make it what he want to make it. You know, 55th and Western is called Garr Square. I helped build that building from the ground up. My grandfather, that's when you said back in those days when he believed in working, we didn't have no cranes. When we pulling them trucks, especially up on that big long 2-story building on 51st and Western, I was like, Granddaddy, when is the crane coming? He was like, the crane's here. I'm looking around.
Looking at the crane.
Oh my goodness, man. Hey, he believed in he got it done too. And he was like, well, you know how much, at the end of the day, he was telling me, you know how much money we saved by not doing that? All it is a little work. You know, the guys got a chance to get paid. Yeah, he worked. Everybody made money. You know how much money I saved? That's it, son. It's about saving money.
Now, one time, y'all built and owned hotels.
Correct. We built the hotel on the Imperial and Western. It was a Comfort Inn. It's called, it's right across the street from Southwest College.
I know the area you're talking
about.
Yeah.
I'm trying, man, I think of the name. I'm sorry, I couldn't think of it. I'm sorry, I can't.
That's
think of the
okay.
name.
Don't worry.
Yeah, but it's on Western and Imperial. So you know, I mean,
y'all had another hotel somewhere else too, didn't you?
Yeah, it's on Broadway. That's a little before my time though. My grandfather and father had that when I was kind of small. And matter of fact, the people just finished paying their loan right before, not too long before Grenada passed. That's what he was always believing in, building stuff and allow people to pay. He's like, because you have money always coming in.
So, how many times did he acquire property, just roughly, with the understanding that we're talking about the 1940s and the 50s and the 60s? How many times did he roughly acquire a piece of property, build a home on it, and then in turn become the bank and carry the note on those properties?
Now, I'm going to just give you an estimation because, like you said, it's 40s and 50s and 60s.
Right.
You know, I was what you call twinkling daddy eye around then, you know?
Yeah.
So, I mean, he bought a lot, man. I've seen a lot of deeds and stuff and a lot of transactions, man, over hundreds to help people because he believed in putting people in their homes, special families.
Now, I want my audience to really appreciate the magnitude and significance of that. We're talking about an era in American history where African Americans, you know, we talk about redlining now, where there was, parts of town they just wouldn't even allow you to buy.
Correct.
But even before that time, it didn't matter what part of town you lived in. You could not get a loan from a bank to buy a house.
Correct.
So the significance of this one man having enough resources, the compassion and the vision.
And the money. His vision was to not fool people because, you know, white people thought they was always slick. So Granddaddy said, okay then. So he went out and got him an estimator, which was a clean-cut white man. And the funniest thing I can never forget, man, when we went in to get that school in Orange Coast College. And Orange Coast College is very, at that time, it was very...
It still is.
Well, you feel like black supposed to... But this white man went in and bid the bid for Garr's. You know, they was reading, and they thinking that he is the man that... When they read the history about the man owning the bank and owning child cares and how long he had his construction company, they was excited. When they, you know, when we went up there... To do the bid without my grandfather, because I was like right with him, but they didn't know that my grandfather was the man. I was just the sidekick. Mm-hmm. You know, we went up in there and they bid. They was just enthusiastic to see this man when he come in and know this man owned the bank and everything, and he was just eating it up, the bidder. So when we got the bid and it was time to go to work, I remember, man, we pulled up in there and it was everybody and the Granddaddy believe in hiring his people. So we pulled up in this all basically white school. Oh my goodness, the mayor, because it was a government funded project, the president of the school, everybody, and my granddaddy, you know, we drive up in the rows. He clean cut. I'm in the back. The white man driving, so he jump out. They go to run to the white man and say, "Oh, Mr. Garr." The funniest expression that they could when that white man turned around and said, "Oh, I'm not Mr. Garr. That's Mr. Garr." Then they look back and realize that everybody in this group was black.
And they done turned over that kind of project.
They done turned that over, not only project, I mean, as far as having the bond, having the money to do it. And they couldn't believe that this man had established the things that they had read about. And they couldn't believe that this man here was the person that they was
looking
thinking
at right now.
They look, you know, and it was just so funny. I mean, if I could have took a picture, I probably could have sold it for $1 million. Just the expression of them people's face when they realized that it was a black company coming to do that. Mm. And that's when I knew right then. I was like, you know, that's when I knew I had to be like my grandfather, because just the feeling of watching, you know, I guess their air coming out, because they thought we was
just some niggas.
Basically. I wasn't going to say that, but yeah.
And the help.
And then they found out he was the HNIC, you know.
And, you know, the beauty of that story is it didn't stop with that particular problem, because I think y'all was sitting in one of the early phases of design, and they had broke out the blueprints for the project, and it had something to do with the concrete. And how much load bearing would be allowed in a certain amount of space or something.
Well, they kept putting in change orders. You know, change orders is when you go give the government funding, and sometimes the contractor has to fund the money. Mm-hmm. You go get your money back, but you can put in a change order, and then you would have to put the money up, and then since it's a government funded job, 5-6 months down the line, you get your money back. So some of the change orders they was putting in when they was changing, they thought, because if you're a contractor and you get caught up in it, and you done got money tied up, and you get halfway and you can't go all the way, then sometimes you lose your money because you have to walk away from the job because you can't finish it, and they got bigger money. They can take you to court and, you know, and win. But once again, they underestimated Mr. Garr. And he finished the school. The change orders added up to like $3 million. So the school ended up being something like, I think, $7 million. But, you know, $3 million, and Granddaddy, he put his money up. And then they, you know, once again, they couldn't believe that he'd done that. Then they was going to try to tie him up in court. Yeah, okay. Granddaddy said, okay, I'll tell you what then. I built the school, don't worry about it. I'm going to put my name on it and fill it up for the black kids. They hurry up and got his money.
Oh, boy. On that note, we're going to take a short pause and be right back. right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Uncle Bobby's Country Corner, where real men definitely don't play. I am honored to have sitting next to me a young brother that I've gotten to know over the last few years, well enough to call him my little brother from another mother, Israel Garr, man. Welcome back, man.
What's up? What's up?
We now have on the line the third of the three amigos.
My boy.
Yeah.
My friend.
An amazing human being in his own right. And just for a quick backstory, once I wrote Let's Go to Work, a mutual friend of ours passed the book on to Antoine Fisher, and then made it possible for me to speak with Anton. I'd met him at a couple of events prior to that, and after he had read the book, he said, you know, that's a fascinating story. And being someone who has been involved in a major way in some of the biggest pictures ever made in the history of Hollywood, in addition to his own story, the Antoine Fisher story, he considered a meeting that I invited him to with Mr. Garr and Israel Garr. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Uncle Bobby's Country Corner, the one, the only,
the greatest,
Antoine Fisher. Welcome,
my
Antoine.
buddy.
Hey, what's happening?
What's
Hey,
up, Antoine? How you?
doing,
I'm
man?
doing all right, man. I'm doing all right. How you doing, man?
Good, good. I see you at the country corner.
Yeah, man.
Well, we're going to keep it 100. So he's from North Carolina. You know, we gave you a Midwestern pass since you were born in Cleveland, you know, but you act so country, you know, we can't tell the difference.
Hey, man. Hey, we all came from the South.
That's it.
Some of us through Charleston, right?
That's true. Yeah, that's true. When you look back at it historically, you know, we didn't land on Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock landed on us. But with that being said, man, we're just sitting here in some ways reminiscing, and in others, you know, peeping into the window of what are the possibilities in the aftermath of Mr. Garr passing away. So initially, I'd like for you to kind of walk us through how you got to know Mr. Garr and what subsequently happened once you and he kind of just got on the same page.
Well, yeah, well, you know, you and Israel and Mr. Garr came to my house, and you guys were, Mr. Garr was thinking about making a film about himself. And when he asked me about it, I thought that maybe doing a documentary would be easier, and or doing a film, because I think at first it was like we were talking about a film, but then I thought, you know, I just thought a documentary would be easier, and then I told him, you know, that I could maybe take him to the studios, or I would go and tell his story and try to see if there would be some interest. And he asked me, he said, well, why can't you do it? I told him, well, it takes a lot of people to make a movie. I write movies, but I can't do everything that, you know, all the jobs. And he said, well, why not? I said, well, you know, I just thought, well, he just didn't understand, but I think he did understand. He just wanted me to do it by myself. And the idea was just like, I mean, I had never crossed my mind to do anything. But he said to me, if I buy the equipment and get you everything you need, you think you can do it? You do the work, and I'll get the equipment. And then I still wasn't sure. I talked to my wife, and she said, well, if he's going to try to make it possible and you don't have to go through all that, why don't you just give it a try? So I did, and got Israel to take me out. Oh, we were all over the place, right? Weren't we, Israel?
Yeah, man, we sure was. That was fun. Y'all didn't know I was with a big Hollywood superstar.
No, hey, Israel took me to, you know, the Guitar Center, the Apple Store, you know, every place. I think we went to Fry's, every place that we needed to go to buy the equipment to make a documentary. And I think after a while, they started calling Mr. Garr, telling him that somebody was using this. Remember that?
Yeah, we was at the Guitar Center the first time that happened, yeah.
Yeah, and he was like, what they buying now?
I said, well, Granddaddy, in order for you to be a star, man, you know, it costs you just to go be Hugh Grant, man. It costs a few dollars.
But not only that, they were surprised because that was a substantial amount of money, and I do mean a substantial amount of money. So they was worried about whether or not it was going to clear. First, they didn't think it was you. Even after you had showed them your driver's license, they still didn't believe it was Antoine Fisher. And then when they realized it was you, oh boy, they got the kissing butt up in them stores. That was funny in itself.
But I thought it was funny that Mr. Garr thought it was funny that we were out shopping and they were calling him.
Yeah. You
remember that?
Yeah. It's me. Go ahead. My grandson doing it. It's okay.
Yeah, so we got it back, and some of that stuff I didn't know how to use, but we started kind of right away. And I was kind of learning how to use the camera, but after a while, I got used to it and figured it out, over time, and for the following 3 years, I would pick him up every day and take him to my house, and some days he would be driving Israel crazy down at the body shop, and Israel called me and said, "Hey, come get Granddaddy." Remember that?
Yeah.
And I come down there. Israel was scratching his head like, "Get him out of here." He was something else. He made it possible for me to do that, and I learned how to do some things I never thought I'd know how to do, but it sounded like he was doing that his whole life, giving people opportunity to do things that they didn't think that they could do, and wound up being successful at it. I mean, the whole time of making the film, he would sit and tell me about his life. It was interesting because he was 96 at the time, and he could remember anything, all the things. Even when he was a little boy, he would tell me stories about himself down in Louisiana, him and his family, and about the local sheriff and the way white people treated black people back then. And when he was, he was born in 1913, so it was pretty tough down in Louisiana. But he made it all the way to California. He talked about that and how much he enjoyed California and how he got drafted, and every time the mail would come, he'd move, and they had to catch up with him. Remember that? Yeah. He cracked me up. He was a crack up. But some days when he talked about his wife and some parts about his life, he would get real emotional. And he wasn't the kind of guy to get emotional, in front of people, because he was a pretty tough guy, But recalling things, he missed his family, his brothers and his mother and all that, grandparents. So we made it. We made the film, and then Sony Pictures, Sony Sound Department did the sound, and Colorworks did the color for the documentary, and then we had a premiere on the Sony lot at Sony Pictures Entertainment, and I think that we played the film was at the Clark Gable Theater. They had a big party at the Rita Hayworth Lounge. You remember that?
Mm-hmm.
It was immaculate, man. It was beautiful.
Yeah. You remember his name was up on the marquee?
Absolutely.
He stood up straight. He was like, "Hey, star, man."
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah. So that was how I met him, and that's how it went. Yeah.
And we still got the documentary we're trying to get out, man. We go get it out to the people because the people need to see it, because you did a wonderful job on it.
Well, thank you, Israel. You helped out. Everybody helped. Remember?
Yeah.
Everybody put their hand on it.
Well, not everybody. We had a few in the structure to try to keep us from billing it, but we just had to push them out to the side.
Antoine.
There's always devils around.
Yeah.
What did it make you feel like to be able to sit with somebody who you shared a sense of hardship with? Because we knew your story just because of the film and the book Finding Fish. How did it make you feel to sit with somebody who was supposed to have died at 3 years old and went through the challenges he did physically most of his life? Did y'all create a certain kind of chemistry and camaraderie as a result of having shared similar, challenges, just being alive?
Well, I don't know if we bonded over struggles that we had that were similar or anything like that. I just being with him every day, and he was 96, so I had to help him. Sometimes I had to hold his arm and help him. He could get around pretty good for a 96-year-old, but he wouldn't need help. And I just picked him up every day. You spend that much time with somebody, and they're sharing and being honest with you, and you just come to like them. And Mr. Garr, I remember he would always say about African Americans. He would say, "How come we can't get together?" You remember that?
Yeah. He believed in everybody coming together to help.
Work together. He used to say, and he liked to do things on a handshake. I mean, that's the way he used to like to do it. That's what he told me. And basically it's what he did with me too. We just decided to do it, and we both kept our words, and wound up with a film. Right?
You debuted the film a few years ago at the Pan-African Film Festival. As you sat there that night, and at the end of the show, without any prompting, a packed audience stood and applauded enthusiastically the fruits of your labor. How did that make you feel?
Well, I don't. The way I grew up always makes me not give myself, credit for things. I just looked at people. I mean, looked at the crowd and just happy that they were happy that they enjoyed it, and I was feeling. I guess I felt that at least what I did, it brought. I felt more of a sense of satisfaction at Sony when we showed it at Sony, because it was packed. And remember, people were standing along the walls even, watching it, and everybody was so happy, and because it told a little bit of our history as African Americans, and a bit of Los Angeles history, and history from Louisiana, Ruston, Louisiana, I think it was, where he's from. So it had a big span of time from 1913 till that time when I made the thing. It was just, kind of, I was just happy to see that people seemed satisfied. Yeah.
Screenwriting and filmmaking are two different disciplines. Did that give you a newfound sense of accomplishment and confidence going forward in the balance of your career?
Well, when you write a screenplay, you have to put the information in that everybody needs to know. So you have to, a screenplay is not like a book. It's more like a schematic or a map for the filmmakers to make the film. So everything that everyone says and everyone does for the actors is there. Everything that the director might need to know, so he could use his own imagination to create shots that he might want. And sometimes the writers put shots in to help the director understand what he's trying to get him to understand about the scene or something. Even the editor, every scene, when you end it, an editor would have to cut the scene right there, or they could, so they get their first idea of the size and the length of scenes and how to put the movie together, because they need the screenplay with numbers on each scene in order to put the movie together in the proper order. So it's the writer who's doing all of that, giving everybody all the information that they need to make the movie. Even the set designer, the set decorator, if it matters, if anything matters with the story that the writer puts in there, the set designer and the set director is going to find it and make it happen. So the writer really is creating the movie, and the director and the other filmmakers bring it to life. So the movie is there once the writer gets done with it. You just need the other people, like the costumers and the actors, to come along and use their creativity to bring it to life.
So when you combine those two processes, from the work that you did on This Life of Mine. And I'm gonna back up a minute. How did you come up with the title This Life of Mine?
I don't know. I just, I like poetry. It seemed kind of a poetic way of saying, like, this is my story.
Oh, it's that simple, huh? You done left me with that dead face.
Sometimes less is more, right? Sometimes you overdo,
not on radio.
Yeah.
Oh, my Lord. But you're understating something that we hope that over time people will be able to form their own opinion about, because to see what you did in the 3 years that you toiled on this project as a friend of yours and as just a fan of filmmaking, man, that was some remarkable work you put in, brother.
Yeah, but, it was like Mr. Garr, is the person, you can have the ability to make a film, and it may not be good because the subject matter is not good. People enjoyed it because of what Mr. Garr had to say and telling his life and all the different experience that he told about, and, how he started with, basically nothing. He wasn't able to read or write, but he made it, became a multi-millionaire. I mean, he's not even here anymore. He still got money. He left money behind. He left property for people to have. Some people, they come here with nothing and leave here with nothing. He came and blessed people all along the way and left big blessings for people when he left. So he lived a good life,
He lived a wonderful life, man.
Yeah. No, Israel, Israel took care of him, when he was, ever since I've known Mr. Garr and Israel was always there, to watch after him, to take care of him, protect him. He did all that. I told him that, when Mr. Garr passed, that, just got a little ways more to go. And I could see he was tired, and emotional about his grandfather passing, but, sometimes you give people some space, but I just wanted to tell him that, once Mr. Garr is there with his wife, there at Inglewood, then he can sit down and let it and breathe, But it's been a lot of years, a lot of work for it. I seen it. I seen Israel taking care of his father and watching after him and getting after people who were trying to take advantage of him. And so I just feel like Israel deserves a lot of credit.
Thank you, Antoine.
That he does, man, because everything that you said is the reason that I have a special relationship with him, because there are so many incidents when people acquire fortunes and they end up surrounded by people that take far more than they give. And in this instance, what Israel has been able to do in that very significant position is inspiring and exemplary of who he is as a man.
Yeah, because, he wasn't there to take advantage. He was just, how when you see a baby learning to walk, you don't want to, pick him up, you don't want him to fall, but you kind of put your arms around so if you start stumbling, you can grab him and catch him. So kind of what Israel was doing all those years, and that I knew Mr. Garr, is kind of like, the one that would look at people and not smile and look at them like, hey, I know what you're doing,
Yeah.
I seen it, so, and I seen him foil a lot of people trying to get over. So, when you get old like that, you don't want to have to worry about people doing things and trying to, get over on you. You want to be able to relax and enjoy, those last years of your life. And so he was able to do it as much as he could, because he had somebody who loved him and took care of him and watched out for him. And so that was good. That was good because a lot of older people don't have that. And sometimes they wind up in places that they didn't intend for themselves to be. And they already had, like Mr. Garr had plans for himself. He didn't have to be in a home or anything like that. He was there at his own home that he built himself with a beautiful view of downtown Los Angeles.
It's a panoramic view of Los Angeles, actually. you and I had a conversation, I guess it was day before yesterday, and you intimated many of the things that you're sharing in this interview now about allowing Israel to, collect its thoughts and have a period of mourning. And I shared with you that
I had to lecture you about that.
Well, Bobby, he gets out of hand sometimes, Antoine. You about the only one that can bring him back.
Well, we feed off of each other's intensity, because I was going with the moment with him, because I was letting him lead the conversation, and he wasn't taking any time off. He was already looking at some of the things that he wanted to do, and of those was to preserve Mr. Garr's legacy. So we split the difference once I had that conversation with you, and you reinforced how you just need to let somebody have a moment, even if they don't think they need one, to collect themselves so that they can push forward with a renewed strength and vigor.
That's right.
Are you still there, Antoine?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Now, I want to take a moment and have you share with us what you're doing now, man. You spent the last, I guess, 3 or 4 months working intently on a new project. Could you share with the audience what that's all about?
Yeah, well, it's a movie for, I can't even say what it's for, but it's for Columbia Pictures, and I can't say anything about it because they didn't make any announcements, and if I was to, then I could get in trouble with that.
Okay, we aren't here for that, but you are working on what's going to probably.
Fisher was on his son's lot getting spanked by the studios.
So it is going to be a very important piece of work, though, right?
Yeah, yes, yeah.
Based on what you said,
Antoine work on is important, Bobby. That's the man.
That's true too. Yeah, that's true too.
Well, let's get Israel in on this, on this conversation.
Man, I'm enjoying listening to you check Bobby.
Well, that's what I like to do.
Well, you've been doing it long enough to be pretty good at it. So what are your thoughts, Israel, as we begin to wrap up tonight?
Man, I think y'all two wonderful fellas, and I'm glad that our paths crossed. Man, Antoine's a wonderful brother, and he treated me like I was his own brother. He embraced me, and his whole family embraced me. My family embraced him. It's just a wonderful thing. You're a good dude. You wrote my grandfather's book. Like he just said, I'm just trying to keep my grandfather's name going and continue to build on our friendship. And, I love just watch Antoine do what he do. Pretty soon he go put me in a nosebleed, and before you know it, shucks, I might be another Denzel.
I gotta tell an Israel story. I had a neighbor that was giving me a hard time over there in my house, and Israel came over there and stood in front of the dude's door. The guy started shaking, and his knees started knocking. I'd never seen a guy teeth chatter, and Israel was just looking at him like he was going to do something to him. And the guy never bothered me anymore.
It's because he's messing with my homeboy's family, man. We ain't going to have that. He's going to take me back to the old days.
Israel got the muscles, see? Everybody needs a friend like Israel.
And the mentality, too, because, he got this scowl that he can put on you that's the last warning before the furniture starts moving around.
Yeah.
We try not to do that. We try not to do that these days. We try to get along with everybody and love everyone.
Yeah.
I've seen the growth in that regard, yeah, because the trigger is not as close as it once was, literally speaking.
Well, you got responsibilities now,
A ton of them. So, any final thoughts as we begin to wrap up tonight's show from Antoine Fisher?
Well, this show is about Mr. Garr and thinking about him. He lived to be 103, and I remember when I was a kid. I think I was telling Bobby this. Remember Jiminy Cricket, that cricket from the Disney program?
Right, yeah.
Yeah. I remember as a kid, he used to sing this song called I'm No Fool, Nursery, I Want to Live to 103. I was like, golly, 103? Yeah, I finally met somebody who lived to 103 all these years, man. So, and he lived good too, and he didn't have a forgetful mind. It's just that his body was old. His mind was still there, you know. And we can't last forever.
No, it was time for him. It was time for him to go on up there with Grandmama. Like you know, his mind was still there. You know, before he ended, he was able to hold my hand, and I could talk to him. He couldn't really speak too much, but you could tell he understood what you were saying because he could squeeze your hand, and you know, he just went out like a soldier, man. Lord rest his soul.
Because last time I saw him, he was telling some of the people to go home.
That's Granddaddy, man.
Yeah.
He was a soldier to the end.
To the very end. Man. Yes, he was, you know. And
don't come in here when you wouldn't come in here when I was able.
That's so true, man.
He didn't like that fakeness, man.
No, he wasn't about none of that. Yeah. So I'd like to simply say when everything settles down, we do get an opportunity to reconvene. I know that there's interest in doing a tribute to Mr. Garr at the Pan-African Film Festival in February. We're also looking at another fitting tribute here in the city of Los Angeles, and we're looking at some other possibilities of connecting with the university down at Grambling in Ruston, Louisiana, and allowing the work to speak for himself, you know, in his absence, because he left indelible footprints, and the people that are left that really care about his legacy, I'm talking to two of them right now, and I look forward to again assembling one day somewhere and lifting up the name of Leon T. Garr.
That's it, Bobby. Appreciate everything you and Antoine done.
Well, it's a beautiful thing, man, that we've been able to associate in this way, because I feel very strongly that in order for us to do better as a people, we have to first and foremost acknowledge the accomplishments of the people who came before us, and use that as a blueprint to do even bigger and better things. And to that extent, I honor you, brother, for making a commitment to breathing life back into the construction company at a time where we need to teach people to use their hands.
You're right, man. A trade. Once you got a trade, my grandfather always instilled. He said you can go to education. I mean, go to college and get all the education you want, which is a good thing. And I never tell nobody not to go. But if you get a trade, that's gonna be with you for life. Because when the computers shut down, or we had what we call a little recession, people with master's degrees was off. People with carpenters was working.
They get plumbers, mechanics, electricians, yes, drywallers, concrete finishers. So. Well, you're in a unique position, man, to look back and then move the ball forward just based on principles that are tried and true, that changed the lives of so many people, including myself, because he gave me an opportunity to write and to tell a significant story in the process. So as we close out tonight, I'd like to share with my listening audience that my son, Jay Glanton-Smith got in touch with me the other day and told me that he and his wife Carmina are having my first grandson. So I wanted to give a shout out, man, to my son and my daughter-in-law. Beautiful. And it inspires me to do this work that we're doing.
Bobby, good work. Good job, Bobby.
No, it ain't my job. I just got to get ready to leave something for him. You know, that's what my objective is now, man, is to put in that kind of work that reflects that, just like Mr. Garr did, you leave something for somebody, man. So I'm at that stage in my life where it's about getting something to leave somebody.
But we go do the construction thing, Bobby, unless Antoine give me that big part and I get that
deal. So, Antoine, man, I love you, brother, and appreciate you so much, dog, man. And as Mr. Garr would say, let's go to work.
Let's go to work, Bobby.
Okay, that's going to do our show for tonight, and we'll see you guys next year.
Buenos, holas, esperas. Bye. That's beautiful.